Hey YouTube, welcome to my channel. In this video, you're going to get to watch me upcycle a men's t-shirt. In the beginning, I loved the t-shirt. I actually got it as a gift, but under the condition that I cut it up and upcycle it. When I tried it on, this is what it looked like. And it really broke my heart that I was going to have to upcycle it, but I'm really happy with the end result. So I put a vote out to the internet, the big vast internet, on which design they wanted to see me do, design 1 or design 2. And everyone, almost exclusively with few exceptions, chose design 2. Thankfully, because I don't think I had enough fabric to make design 1. So it came out, I think, pretty much almost exactly like the picture. If you like what you see on my channel, don't forget to press like, don't forget to press subscribe, or if you know somebody else who's interested in upcycles or learning how to sew, don't forget to share this with them. Alright, so in order to make our hoodie dress, we will need our t-shirt that we'll be cutting up, and this is a men's extra large t-shirt. We will also be needing our black bullet fabric, and I'm going to be using this. It's a solid stretchy fabric. I'm going to be using it for the waistline. We have another black fabric here, which is softer, also stretchy, just a regular knit, that I'll be using for the sleeves, and we want that softer sleeve because we want that flexibility. In addition to the materials that we'll be using on the dress, we also need our patterns. So I'm going to use my own clothing for the patterns so I can get the shape that I want. The first thing that we'll be using is just a regular sweater dress. So this is a fitted sweater dress. And finally, I have just a regular old hoodie. And I'm just going to use that to trace the shape of our hood. Alright, so in order to commit to losing this t-shirt, I'm going to do a commitment cut. I am going to go ahead and I'm going to cut the sleeves off, which we will be using. I am also going to cut the collar off, which I don't think I'll be using, but I'll hold on to just in case. Alright, so time to say goodbye. Alright, so I've completed my commitment cut. The collar is gone, the sleeves are gone, and it's ready to go. Alright, so I turned my shirt inside out, and I'm going to go ahead and put my sweater dress on top just to get a sense of the shape that is going to end up coming out of this shirt. Alright, so now that my dress is laid out on the fabric, if I were to make just a regular dress, I could probably mark the shape of the dress out and cut it out now. However, that's not the purpose of why I have the dress laid out. I'm actually going to have a big center stripe that's going at a diagonal, and I want to be able to visualize that shape. So instead of trying to visualize it on the t-shirt, I do want to visualize it on the dress and then transform that to my cut underneath on the t-shirt. And everything I'm saying is going to make sense as I do it, so just keep watching. I would like my diagonal stripe, the black, to start right under the arm and go at a diagonal to about the waistline. So I went ahead and put the tape measure going from that point high underneath the arm to the waist so that you could get a sense of that diagonal. And what I'm going to go and do now is take the chalk and mark that on the green fabric. And mark the other side as well. Alright, so now I can remove my dress for now, put the tape measure back, and mark the line. Actually found a ruler that made that so much easier, so we go ahead and finish marking that diagonal line. Alright, so now I have that diagonal line, and that is going to represent the top of the diagonal black stripe that we have. Alright, now, so in order to get our hood, we do want a green hood, and so the place that this hood is coming from is the middle of this shirt. So I'm going to go ahead and I am going to mark out the shape of the hood right underneath that diagonal line. So I'm really trying to save my fabric here, not waste any fabric at all. Now, my hood is going to be green for the most part, but it is going to be black at the front. So I will get this much fabric from that diagonal. So I'm going to go ahead and draw another line going that direction. And I'm going to steal that middle part for the hood, and I will replace it with black. So, all right, so I'm just marking out a small part of it, but instead of going the whole way down that way, I am going to measure the distance between our first diagonal line at the top and our line or marking that we just made. And I'm going to make sure that it's parallel by making sure the distance between both lines are the same going throughout the entire shirt. Here it is 7.5 inches between both lines. So again, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that that 7.5 is consistent the entire way. And then I'll join those points once I'm done. So now I have my 2 parallel lines. I am going to cut out this area, and that area will be used to make the hood, and I will be replacing this area with black fabric. All right, so now we have 3 pieces of fabric going on here. The shirt is in pieces. I have committed. There is no turning back. All right, so now what comes next is replacing this with some black fabric. All right, so the black fabric that I'm going to put in place of the green that I just removed will have to be bigger because I want my dress longer than just a t-shirt. All right, so to determine how big I need my black fabric in the middle to be, I actually put everything back together and I placed the dress on top of the shirt again. I marked out how long I want my green dress to be, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this bottom layer and I'm going to pull it down to match the length of the dress that I currently have, or the length that I want the dress to be. All right, so fortunately, because this is an upcycle, my shirt was already hemmed. So now the black portion of our dress will have to be that big in order for us to fill that middle space. All right, so even though this is a pretty unconventional way to have everything laid out, I am doing this so I can get the shape of the middle of my dress that I'm making. So I have my bullet fabric here and it stretches in this direction, just like how my dress and my shirt stretch in that direction. And I am going to cut the middle from that black fabric. So what I did is, what I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out where the bottom of the dress comes up to, and I'm going to mark just below that point, giving myself enough space for seam allowance. And I'm going to do the same thing on that side. Actually, I already did it, if you see the mark there. On this side, I'm going to look for where the green ends, and I'm going to mark just above that, giving myself enough space for seam allowance. And I did the same thing on the other side. So now that I have those markings, I am going to lay my tape measure down again along with the ruler and mark a straight line going from here to here, from here to here, and then cut that out. All right, so I have my lines drawn and I'm ready to cut that black fabric out. And I'm going to be very careful not to cut my dress underneath. All right, so I went ahead and I put my pattern away for now. I'm not going to cut the shape of the dress out yet. I'm going to finish preparing our fabric first. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the seams of our shirt, which we could have done a long time ago, but you know, one step at a time. And I am going to go ahead and join the black to the green on the bottom and the green to the black at the top. And then we're going to go ahead and make the dress. All right, so to join our fabrics together, I'm going to go ahead and put the right side next to the right side. So the right side of the shirt against the right side of the fabric. I'm going to go ahead and pin it. And once it's all pinned, I can bring it to the sewing machine and stitch those sides together. Now, really trying to preserve on fabric, I'm not giving myself a huge seam allowance here, but I'm giving myself just enough to make sure that my shirt will not have holes in it, or my dress rather. So this is what it looks like with the panels pinned together. The top, the middle, where the waistline is at the diagonal, and the bottom. All right, let's bring it to the sewing machine. Make sure you're on a zigzag stitch or another stretchy stitch before you begin to sew. All right, so I've sewed the panels together in the front and in the back, and everything looks pretty good. So now I'm ready to set it up and have my pattern on top. All right, so everything is set up now. My shirt is inside out. I'm gonna go ahead and fold it in half. All right, so I went ahead and folded that in half. So there's 4 layers of fabric here. And this is my fold line. So I'm gonna take my dress and I'm gonna fold my dress in half as well and put the fold line of the dress on top of the fold line of my now newly made fabric. So the fold of my dress is now on the fold of the fabric, and so I'm ready to go ahead and pin the shape of the dress. Now, one thing that's definitely worth noting is the fact that my t-shirt is not as stretchy as my dress, and for that reason, instead of pinning right along the dress, I'm going to go out a little bit just to make sure that I have enough space. I'm also not going to cut this until I try it on. So I'm going to put a lot of pins in there so I can try it on, make sure it fits before I cut off the excess fabric. All right, so as I said before, since I am not sure how much this is going to stretch, I am not going to cut off too much. I'm just going to cut off just enough so that I can try it on. All right, so right now we have 4 layers of fabric pinned together. So in order to open it up, we don't want to go ahead and unpin everything all at once. Just unpin one, grab 2 layers of fabric, repin, so we're repinning where it was before, and then grab the other 2 layers of fabric and pin that together as well. And we're doing it just 1 pin at a time so that we can make sure that we keep our dress symmetric. So here's what we have so far. All that's left to do is put on the hood and put on the sleeves. All right, so here is the piece that we cut out earlier from the center of the shirt. Now we're ready to take this piece and use it for our hood. I'm also going to save some of it because I think I'm going to use some of it for a part of the sleeve as well. All right, so notice it, our hood that we're using as a pattern does go over, but that's okay, because I do plan to have black at the front of the hood. So I want to make sure I get as much of this green in our hood as possible. All right, so I've pinned all around the hood where I'm going to sew, and I also took my chalk and marked out the bottom of the shape of the hood, which I have marked here. All right, so I'm going to cut that out, and then I'm going to also cut out the black to put at the front. So here's what we have so far for our hood. This is the green part, and we need to add black to the front. So I'm going to just go ahead and make an approximate cut here for the size. I'm not going to get it exact yet. I just want to make sure that I have enough. All right, so here I have the hood that I'm using as my pattern. I'm going to put it back in place. We need to have enough black to go out to here, and then a bit more so that we can hem the front of the hood. So I'm going to make this strip cut off at about that point. And I'll make one for the front and one for the back, or rather one for the left and one for the right. All right, so now that we have our black strips and we have the green part of our hood, I can go ahead and pin the right side of my black fabric to the right side of my green fabric. So always, again, right side to right side, and we can go ahead and pin this strip. So now we have our 4 panels pinned together. The black is pinned to the green is also pinned to the green, and on the other side we have the black pinned to the green. So now all the panels in the hood are attached to each other. So I'm going to go ahead and trace out the shape onto the black section as well, so I can continue to pin and sew those together as well. Alright, so here's the hood that I just made. I did not hem the front of the hood because I want to make sure that it's the perfect size for the dress. So I know that it's a little bit bigger than I need it to be, and I will adjust it as needed once I have everything pinned to the dress. So now it's time to pin the hood to the dress. So I'm going to take the dress and I'm folding it in half, and I'm going to catch the very center of the back of the dress. So I'm going to take that, which is right here, okay, and I'm going to just stick a pin onto that piece of the dress just so that I can mark it for now, and that is going to be pinned to the back of the hood. So I'm going to find that on our hood. A little bit easier to find on the hood because we have a seam in that spot. So I'm going to go ahead and pin the right side of our fabric in the back to the right side of the fabric for the hood. I'm going to go ahead and pin that together, and then I'm going to go around the neckline with the base of the hood. Alright, so I still did not hem the front of the hood, and the reason is because I want to make sure that everything lines up perfectly. So I'm going to sew everything almost to the center, and when I get to that point I'm going to fold it and make sure everything lines up perfectly with the center of my dress. Alright, so let's start. Alright, so the hem of our hood is pinned and we're ready to sew it up. So now we're ready to do the sleeve. Right now I have my black folded in half and it stretches in this direction. I'm going to trace out the shape of an entire sleeve here, but I'm actually going to be replacing parts of this back with green. So in order to get the shape of the sleeve, I'm taking the dress and I'm putting the arm section to line up with the fold of the dress. So this is the seam at the arm, and I'm aligning that seam up with the fold of the fabric right here. And so I'm going to lay everything out flat, and that will give us the curve of the sleeve. All right, and so I'll just go ahead and take my chalk and mark that out. All right, and once we have the shape of the curve of the arm, I'm just going to go ahead and use my sleeve for the dress that we used as a pattern to determine the length of the sleeve that I want, and the width going down along the arm. So after I pinned the sleeve, I cut it out, and then I used the first one as a template for the second one. Now I'm ready to sew them up. Alright, so our dress is on the wrong side and our sleeve is on the right side, and I'm going to go ahead and stick my sleeve into the arm and match up the seams of the sleeve with the seam of the dress. So the right side and the right side should touch. The right side of the dress and the right side of the sleeve should touch, and I'm going to go ahead and pin that area and then also pin all around the sleeve. Alright, so I'll be making cuffs for the sleeve, and the cuffs will be green. In order to make these cuffs, I've prepared a strip of fabric, and I'm going to fold it in half and turn it inside out, and I'm going to put it against the sleeve, which is right side out, and match it up together so that I can measure out the width. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and pin that width and then take it to the sewing machine. Alright, so we've sewn our cuff. Now we're going to fold it in half and double it in this way. And once we folded it in half, we go ahead and we take one of our sleeves and we stick our sleeve, which is right side out, into the cuff. And so we're going to be lining up the seam. Let's bring that closer so you can see. We're going to be lining up the seam of the sleeve with the seam of the cuff. So right here. All right, and so notice our raw edges are all in the same line with each other. All right, and we're gonna pin. Right, so once our cuff is pinned onto the sleeve, in order to sew it, we have to sew from the inside. So we're gonna feed this into the machine, and it's a very small space that we're working with. And then we make sure we're on the zigzag stitch because it's going to be going around the wrist and we want to make sure it can fit. So we changed to the zigzag stitch already and we can go ahead and sew. Alright, and so this is what the cuff looks like once you're done sewing it on. And we are officially done sewing with the sewing part of our project.